This is what a spirit-led life is supposed to look like. And we've been taught it to be sometimes something completely different. Like, oh, the spirit leads me here to separate from you. Well, are you sure that's the right spirit you're listening to? Because the spirit in here within the heart sees everything as one. Guaranteed, if you're seeing division and you're using your discernment to separate, that discernment, that's the word bayin, is bet. First letter means on the inside. The discernment is for the inside of you. It isn't to discern to separate yourself. There's enough separation in the world. You don't need to help it along. You need to find the power, Yod, on the inside, Bet, to deal with your fallen flesh, your fallen beast ego nature. That is where discernment's supposed to be, because you are dual. So that's actually a good segue, because I made a slide up, and I'm going to go through this before we go into the verse of woman, be quiet, because the verse that we're looking in is really short today. And it's okay. Really, it kind of makes me laugh, because if we don't divorce ourselves from narratives, we're going to just get tripped up. We're just going to get tripped up over and over again. And some of this is because it's been programmed from when we were little children, where our woundings were, right? Because we always have to have a bad guy. We always have to have something to blame on the outside to make sense of the wounds and the fears and everything that the ego traps itself with. We have to have an outside boogeyman. And unfortunately, Eve became that from the beginning. So let's take a look at what I wanted to share with you. So I want to share this with you. I had this thought this morning, and this is actually tying into the reason why I'm sharing this, truly, is this is connecting to things that I have been processing, but also based on Ken's Golden Compass teaching, because there's more of them that are coming out. We figured out how to download them a little bit quicker. So Jesse's got a whole bunch that have been backed up. And so they're going to come forward. I just released
one. I've been waiting.
They are so freaking good. So just to let you know, I went back to the beginning and I started the very first one, and I sat there.
I could do that too. Yeah.
And what I want to do is I want to take segments and do short snippets, because there's a couple things that can be added to bring a little bit more clarity from a different perspective. It's kind of how Ken and I work, right? So he gives you the whole bottle of water, but yet you're like, holy moly, I don't even know what to do this. And I take the cap off and say, drink. You know? And anyway, there's something, the vision that kind of spirit gave us a long time ago, but it's being able to help from a different fractal of the diamond, right? A different light, just a different way of looking at it. And because I was listening to it this morning when I was exercising, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is so good. So what I'm sharing with you is to bring a little bit more clarity to things that Ken is sharing about the compass, but very much about everything that we're talking about with the ego and everything. I was grateful that the spirit shared it with me. And I was grateful that Ken and I had some really good discussion this morning to prepare me to share today. So without further ado, let's look at this. I want you to look at the Vitruvius man. Now, this is a different picture of it. We're familiar with the one that Leonardo da Vinci drew, right? But this is the Vitruvius man. And I was looking at this, and Ken and I were discussing it, because I think there's a misconception when we say of moving into the dark, like you need to take your light into the dark. And I'll show it to you as we go on. So what happens is that we were created as light from the very beginning. We were light. We were one light. And you can say that is consciousness, right? So consciousness in light is truth, is love. But when we became divided for experience sake, right? We were divided into light and into dark. So you can look at that all within the first book of Genesis. And this specifically, the Elohim were divided. So it was like there was the separation between the day and the night, and Elohim divided themselves into light and dark. And so we have the dualism within us. Now, let's enter the word kuf, because this is what you were talking about in the very beginning of our conversation about what compressing light and compressing dark looks like, right?
Yeah.
So here, if you look at the circle, the blue circle, this is symbolic, or this is literally the letter kuf in its earlier form in Paleo Hebrew. Not pictograph form, but Paleo Hebrew.
Yes.
Circle with the line.
Yeah.
And this is light and dark that have been divided. And it's a symbol of the sun, because the fullness of our maturation is to become as brilliant as the sun. The sun shines continuously. It doesn't stop. It's constantly shining. Now, yes, it has sunspots, and then you look at it and there's dark spots. I get all that. I'm not going into that. I'm just saying that the sun shines continuously. We turn, but it stays. Now, so when we look at this, as the letter Kuf, the blue line represents the horizon, that which is revealed versus that which is hidden. And when we walk the narrow path, it is uniting that which has been revealed and that which has been hidden. And we do this in the circle of time by going into what was hidden to fully reveal the fullness of the light. Right? Because it's a picture of the sun. Only our perspective is different. So when we see the sun rise and the sun set, we see the sun come up and we see the sun go down. That's a representation of what happens in our dual system. Too much light, the dark has to come. Too much dark, the light has to come. And it's through this inculcative process of repeating it over and over again. And we see it in nature, but yet we don't realize that the very thing that is manifested in nature declares that which is within us. As within, so without. As above, so below. And we don't connect it to, I don't, okay? I didn't connect it to that until here fairly recently. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this makes so much more sense now.
Yeah.
So the Kuf is finding that center line between the light and the dark, and it's the condensing of the light within that reveals that which has been hidden. What has been hidden is our true self. What is being revealed is our egoic self. The true self has been hidden because the ego masks it.
Yeah.
Oh, moving a little forward here. So the line that I just showed you, this movement here, when Ken talks about being born, he says that we're born into the West. And I get it because it's all based on definition. It's all based on definition, okay? So when we're born into the West, we are born into the dark, meaning we are completely freaking clueless. We have no idea what's coming in. The slate has been wiped clean. But in the system of duality, look what is immediately to the opposite side of it. When you are born, you are fully illuminated because you are just awareness. You are dark and light. You know nothing, but you're experiencing everything with no bias. It just is.
Right.
So then what happens? What ends up happening then? Hold on just a second. I'm going to erase my ink here so we can move it. So in Ken's compass teaching, he says everybody needs to head south. And this is where you begin your right-hand path journey. Now, his teachings explain the rest. I'm just giving you a schematic to look at so we can connect it to what is going on so that we can enter into the verse that I want to share with you, because everything is tied into everything. I love it when he said everything is tied into everything. You know, everything speaks. All is all. We just see fractals and pieces. And I'm like, yep, totally get it. I get it. So when we head to the south is when we start taking the right-hand path, because that takes us out of the dark into the light, right? Now watch this.
Yeah.
So as we do this, we begin swinging into the light so that we can then enter into darkness. But, and notice that inculcation cycle over and over and over again, because that which you haven't dealt with in your darkness, in your shadow side, is going to continually have being light pointing to it. So if you haven't dealt with it, okay, so let's say that the way that this is being dealt with is that you have interactions with people that cause friction because there's something in you that you still need to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
You have an interaction with somebody, it causes you to be triggered. You're out of your shalom. There's something that is making you feel uncomfortable. Unless you seek out why you are being uncomfortable in that moment and you choose not to deal with it, guess what? It's going to show up again.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Moon phases. So let me show, I'm going to just do this one more time before we go into the moon phases here. So whatever you don't deal with is going to keep hounding you over and over and over again as it makes another revolution, the light going into the shadow. So if you stay in the shadow, you don't reveal the light and you block it off and you stay, I'm only over here. I'm not looking at my shadow side because I'm all good and you're not recognizing this. Oh, guess what? You get to go through it again. Time and time and time again. Hence why I bring in the moon phases. Because with the moon phases, again, so the sun shows it and so does the moon. But we think that we have to bring all of that light into the darkness, right? So that like when we say that you go from the light into the darkness, and I know that's been a confusing thought because people will associate darkness with some of the really dark things that we have seen with,
Mm-hmm.
pedophilia and, just
Yeah.
the things that we have been
The worst.
conditioned to, right?
Yeah.
Plus a whole lot of other things that I'm not going to name, not
Yeah.
because I have fear, but because I know that these things are being censored. But we know what we're all talking about because of the programming of what we believe is the dark and the evil, right?
Mm-hmm.
But we've also shared that part of evil is being a child, one who doesn't know, one who harms another because they don't know, they haven't been instructed. So if we keep going with too much light, the dark decreases. If we have too much dark, the light increases because of the push and the pull. And then we see it with the tides. And I know we've already shared this, but again, through inculcation. So the tide flows in and the tide flows out. And it's affected by what? The moon cycle. So everything in nature is declaring that which we need to see that is within ourselves. If we just slow down and go, what is nature telling me?
Mm-hmm.
What is it sharing with me about the inside of me? So this is the way we've seen it. So we enter down into the south, right? And we've seen it that we're saying, oh, no, you need to go through the light into the dark. But in reality, because we live in the system of duality, once you find center balance, you are both points simultaneously at the same time. Now watch this. This is a big point. And this is where everything that Ken's talking about is this. That's why these compass teachings drill down into the minutia and really get specific so that we can grasp this. So look at the bottom dot, but don't forget the top dot. So the bottom dot, as it swings around the light, if you are in center point, is revealing the dark at the same time because they're both connected. So we're not saying that you have to go into the dark arts, that you needed to go into dark magic, that you need to go into any of those things. What we're saying is that through your light, if you're stretching out both arms as you go through the compass, right? You are connecting your light automatically to the dark. That's how your light is illuminating the darkness, by finding 0 point, because that's the place where you have the potential for both. And as you are going around, you're sharing your light to the other part on the compass, which is in the dark, which is what it's doing, is revealing you completely and totally, so that when you make it all the way around, you are now whole and healed. So any moment on that compass is going to reveal a shadow aspect of you. So if we keep thinking, so this is where the deception in the New Age movement is, everything is light. Everything is good. All ever is light. I just need to ignore that. I'm not looking at the evil. I'm not looking at the dark. Well, the light is meant to reveal the dark. So you're cutting off half of you. So every time you increase in an increment in step and light, that increment, that enlightenment is meant to shed light on another part of your shadow.
Yeah, that's really good.
That's the whole compass teaching. So Ken and I were discussing it this morning, and he's like, that's what I've been, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm finally really getting it. I'm getting it. Because in our dual mindset, right, we separate everything. It's like, oh, I have to take my light and then I have to go all the way in the dark. No, you don't. All you have to do is allow the light, the new increment of light, to shed light on your shadow, because they exist at the same time. And if you do that and you don't fight it, because okay, so you take a new step in illumination and all of a sudden something else of your shadow is revealed, but you don't want to look at your shadow. I just want to stay up here. I want to be high vibes. I want to keep positive. I want to stay up here. Well, guess what? The darkness is going to overcome you, because you need to go back and find the center balance, which connects both to both sides. And grasp a hold of it and love it and go, you know what? This is part of me. I have the potential of good and evil, but you know what? I see both. I see them simultaneously happen because I've held both ends of the pole. So every single fractal on the compass is shedding light into the dark.
Yes, that's good.
It made a huge difference when I began to picture in my mind and really grasp what Ken was saying about the compass.
Mm-hmm.
So the journey is only really halfway, if you allow the light to illuminate the dark, that which is hidden.
Mm-hmm.
Because mother and father are they're the same thing. They're overlaying one another. And dependent upon where you are at, they're trying to show you different degrees in the compass at the exact same time. But we can't comprehend this until we spiritually mature enough and get out of the separation mentality of dualism, of duality. Then you don't see the duality, you see the dual system running simultaneously, because that's who you are. You are running both at the same time. The light and the dark operate at the same time. And that's why center point, shalom, is so important, because that consuming fire, this is where I was saying the balance of the sun. Because when you go through the lesser light, the moon, when you go through the lesser light and you go through those phases of light and dark in the system of duality, so you can see both, then you have the ability to not just be one point on the compass, right? Now you can be both points running simultaneously. That is when you become the manifestation of the Shemesh, the sun. Because Shemesh is a sheen on the front, sheen on the back, with the mem in the middle. And the mem, how much of our body is water? The fire of mother and the fire of father come to make the vessel of water illuminated as the sun, no longer the lesser light. Lesser light is a system of duality. The greater light is one who has risen above duality, that has been able to embrace both sides, it for what it is, simultaneously running, not divided anymore. It's like, I see the dual system running, but I don't have to be dual and divided on the inside of me. And now, when you become that, you just are looking through illuminated eyes, not choosing sides, not choosing the light or the dark, because you've rendered everything clear, because you allowed the light to illuminate the dark, and you found the center place in between. And this center point, so now we took the kuf, So remember the kuf was this way? This symbol right here, if you drew the lines a little bit further up, would be phi, the Greek word phi, which is 9, which has to do with center and the spiral that always finds the center. This is phi. So we take the horizontal and we make it now vertical, where we have found center, and that vortex created in like when you flush a toilet and it spirals, right? Or you see water vortexes and it all spirals, or you see the arms of the galaxy. When you are in the center place, phi is running around you, which is how the toroidal field works. It folds upon itself and then it collapses into the center, and that's how the vortex works. That's how the toroidal field works. So if you want your energy flowing, you want the chi flowing in you, you have to balance the light and the dark.
Wow. That's pretty deep, Carrie. This is the higher teachings.
This is what Ken's been sharing. And like this morning when we were having the discussion and I had all these imagery coming to me, I was like, oh my gosh, like dot connect, dot connect, dot connect, dot connect. And like, this is it. This is why. So but we can't run.
His excavations are deep. They just are.
They are. And his, you know, you have to listen to it quite a few times to really take out what he's saying. But I love the beauty that he brings in all those Hebrew words and he unpacks it. It's like this beautiful lotus flower that's just petal after petal after petal after petal, and you can stop and savor a fractal of what he's sharing. But this is the fullness of what he's sharing here. I just simplified it. But I love the minutia. So I go into his teachings and I look at it and I'm like, I'm mind blown. I'm like, this is so amazing, because it goes from macro to micro, back to macro, back to micro, and back and forth, which is the pulsing, right? It's the pulsing of the toroidal field, which matches the pulsation of our heart, our heartbeat, thump, 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 thump. And it's that dual beat that come together as one heartbeat that presses the toroidal field up and out. So yes, it pumps our blood, but it's also what's activating the toroidal field when all of those energy centers are running, because you allowed your light into the darkness to be able to get into 0 point center balance. The last thing that I want to highlight, and I should have highlighted the crossbars, but when you look at the Vitruvius man, do you see what shape that makes? It's an X, right?
Yeah.
That is the paleo symbol for the Tav.
Yeah, the mark.
The mark, the covenant.
Yeah.
And I just shared a whole thing about the covenant, that the covenant, Brit, Barashit, is the one fire that was given at the beginning, the covenant of oneness, one fire. The sun is one fire. It's not divided.
Yeah.
This is what we are to become.
Yeah.
So that we can be fully illuminated. And the word Shemesh, as we know, is sun, but it also means to serve and minister. The same exact word. The servant candle in the middle of the menorah that lights the rest, becoming the light of the world by going through this process. This is how we activate Mashiach. This is how we activate the Christ anointing.
Yeah.
And when you're in that place of center point, you can then teach, because you then become it. It's not an idea or a concept from here, because it radiates from the inside out. That fire illuminates the throat chakra, and out of your mouth speaks truth without any biases. That is the self-illumination.
Really, it's the missing piece, and it's the reason people are not walking with the Christ anointing on this earth. That's the key right there.
It is. And the problem is that the book that we have all been carrying is the anti-anointing, because it continues to divide and separate. But when you get into the sacred languages, you see the oneness unity over and over and over and over again. And that truth hits you at the heart level because it's spiritually discerned. That's why many people will read the Bible and then put it away and say, this doesn't resonate with me anymore. Because if they're coming from a place where they connected at their source in the center, in their heart through spirit, they will read verses and go, this cannot be. This book contradicts itself because it was meant to keep us in confusion and chaos within the cycles of the moon, the light and the dark, the pendulum swing, because we think that we need to chase out evil by our light when the evil's going to push back, because that's what you're fighting on the inside. It can never be manifested on the outside because it's never meant to be one. It's meant to be balanced.